Hello and welcome to this edition of Naturally Scott. I'm Scott Harris, and I'm excited to share today's conversation with Julie Zickefoose. Many of you know Julie through BWD magazine. She is a scientist, an author, an artist. She is a birder extraordinaire. She has traveled the world birding, but would prefer to bird in her own backyard. Of course, her backyard is 80 acres out in the middle of Ohio, and we're going to learn about all that today. And following my conversation with Julie, we will have our regular field notes, and we already know what it's going to be today. It's going to be on Henslow's sparrows, and if you listen to Julie's podcast, you will know why. So join us, enjoy, have some fun, hopefully as much as I did doing the interview, and I'll look forward to hearing back and getting your feedback, as I always do. Thank you so much. Take care and stay curious. Welcome to this edition of Naturally Scott. I'm Scott Harris. We've got a fun one lined up for you. We've got a woman who's got some great stories to share with us. She's got a couple that maybe she shouldn't share, but she's got a bunch that she can share. So we're looking forward to those. This is Julie Zickefoose, and Julie is well known to most birders around the country and a lot of birders around the world, and probably quite a few people who aren't birders. And we're going to talk about all the reasons why and the background and some stories and her property in Ohio. So I'm pretty excited about that. Julie is not only a guest on this podcast, she is a guest in the book, Why We Love Birds. And she will be the closing chapter since it goes in alphabetical order. So the last chapter you read in that book when it comes out will be about Julie, which I think will be fun. Now, we're going to talk about a lot of stuff. We're going to talk a little bit about Julie's childhood. We're going to talk about her professional life. We're going to talk about her books and her writing and her art. So many things are we going to talk about. First, what we're going to talk about is Carlos in Arizona, which is the article that she just published in the current issue of BWD. And we'll be talking more about BWD as well. But tell me how being Carlos in Arizona, and this, by the way, from a woman who has traveled the world for a half century or more, has been all around the world in a variety of different places and continents and with challenges. And somehow or another, she wound up Carlos in Arizona. And she's going to tell us exactly how that happened and then what it meant to be Carlos in Arizona.
So I'm first and foremost a mother, and my daughter, who is 29, was home for the summer, and she wanted to sell her car. And so I jumped into full mom mode where I was helping her, negotiate with the buyers and put the Facebook ad up and everything. And she's very capable, but I was very absorbed in that. And in the meantime, I had a birthday, and I did not know it, but my driver's license had expired on my birthday. But I was very immersed in selling a Subaru, so I didn't notice that. And I did not look at my license, and nobody sent me anything in the mail that said, uh-oh, your license is expiring. Or maybe they did, and I just ignored it. And so I got to the rental car counter in Phoenix, and I was blithely renting my vehicle for about 7 or 8 days of driving around Arizona when the guy said, we have a problem. And he said, I'm looking at your driver's license here, and it appears to be expired. And I said, oh, well, there's got to be a grace period, right? I mean, it expired 3 days ago. So, big deal. And he said, well, there's a couple things we can try. And they included renewing online. And
I didn't know that was a thing, by the way, until I read your article.
Well, I was thrilled, and hope briefly flickered in my breast. And then it turned out that because I am over 65, I would have had to go back to Ohio and take a vision test, which takes all of 15 seconds, in person to make sure that I was roadworthy. So they could not renew my license online, and there was no grace period. And I was Carlos in Arizona. So I spent quite a bit of that afternoon crying in the Phoenix airport, eating a horrible fish taco. And then my daughter...
I'm sorry. You bought a fish taco in an airport?
I was hungry and I had no car. What do you want me to do? Uber? So I called the same daughter who I was selling the car for, and she talked me through it. She helped me download the Uber app, and I got myself full for somebody who had this vision of just driving up the canyons by yourself and then going on a 4-hour hike and then coming back. And you know what I mean? It's like,
and you're a fairly independent woman.
Yeah, well, I have to be. So I had to actually turn into a human being and ask people for favors. And I did. And it was actually great. It was the best. And I got to bird with fantastic people who were all falling all over themselves to take me birding. So it was fantastic. And I even got a solo hike in. So I have nothing to complain about. But I got a two-part article for BWD magazine out of it, and the second part just published.
Well, that's fantastic. And
Yeah.
which festival was it?
It was I think it's called Southwest Wings out of Sierra Vista, Arizona.
Okay.
I believe that's what it's called. I get confused because there's so many, and I've been hitting Arizona pretty hard lately, so but I'm pretty sure it's
Any good birds on that trip?
my goodness, yeah. I got my life Montezuma quail, which is all I need to say to you.
Congratulations. Not
That
very
was
many people
amazing.
get to say that.
Well, I was the only person at the festival who saw one, and that was
Wow.
because I was being taken around by Christy Gallo and Tim Blount, fabulous guides, and they knew where to go to get me that Montezuma quail, which I never would have gotten on my own.
And actually, both Christy and Tim are in the book Why We Love Birds.
Fantastic.
They
Some of
are
my
both, they are, well, and it was Christy who suggested that I get in touch with you.
for Pete's sake.
So, yeah, I love Christy and Tim
Yeah.
and the Ashbird Sanctuary, and they are just such great people. And I talk about Christy when I give my talks at the Audubon Club about how surprising people can be. Here you have a woman close to 200 pounds, tremendously strong. She set a world record for women's powerlifting, and then she's fascinated with quarter of an ounce hummingbirds.
Yeah.
And the dichotomy to me, and she is the sweetest person in the world,
I know.
but I don't think you want to irritate her.
I've never seen her mad. You know, she's a very mild-mannered person, but I'll
Yep.
tell you what, as soon as I met her and got her story and started talking with her, I thought, "I wanna write about this woman. She's so
Yes.
fascinating." Yeah.
Well, I did, and I wrote about her in the book, and then I wrote about Tim, who
Right.
independently has had a fascinating life.
Yeah, yeah.
You
He
know, with
was
the Malheur National Wildlife
well,
Refuge and all
here
of that.
event. Yep.
And so, yeah, I'm glad we share friends there. But it was Christy that put me onto you, gave me your number and said, "You can't publish the book without Julie."
Oh, how
So
sweet is that?
that wasn't in my contract, but she made it abundantly clear.
And
So
that's after lugging me around Arizona, so I appreciate that.
there you go. So we have a lot to go over, but let's back up. You have a blue-winged warbler in your past to thank as a spark bird, if I remember right. So tell us about that.
Well, I was 8 years old, and I had my father's old Zeiss binoculars, which had the kind of, like, alligator pebbled armoring that came off in big chunks, and, the lenses were an amber color because the coatings had long since completely degraded, and so every bird I saw looked yellow, but I took them out. I wore them all the time, and I treasured them. I didn't know what good binoculars were like, and I heard a little bird bathing in the forest behind my house. It was a little 5-acre patch of woods, which was like the 100-acre woods for me because I was just a kid. And I heard this little of the bird bathing, and I just kind of very slowly jungle crawled up. And I saw this thing at eye level bathing, and it had a little black bandit mask, and it was all yellow with blue wings and white wing bars. And I thought, where have you been all my life? That this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. I mean, I was very familiar with mockingbirds and catbirds and cardinals and flickers and all the birds around the yard, but I didn't know that warblers even existed because I didn't have a bird book. So I saw this thing and I had to know what it was. And I had the best set of parents because they immediately bought me the National Geographic book of Song and Garden Birds of Eastern North America or North America. And it was just, full of color photographs and species accounts. And I read every species account of every bird, even the Western ones. And I found my bird. And then they bought me Arthur Singer and Chan Robbins' Golden Guide, field guide. And that was my first field guide. So I was all set then. And
And
of
you were
course,
a big fan of Singer's illustrations, right?
well, as a kid, yeah, I was. I mean, the Singer's illustrations were very colorful and very vibrant. As I got older, I had a little issue with some of his anatomy was a little wonky to my eye. But as a kid, they were just exactly what I wanted. But it was actually Fuerte's illustrations in the next book, bird book that my dad bought me, which was actually, I think my mom bought it for me. I had an extra tooth come in the roof of my mouth when I was about 8 or 9, and I had to have oral surgery, which was very primitive at that time. I think they used a rock and a chisel. And when I came out of it, they took me to a bookstore and they bought me The Birds of Eastern North America by John Bichard May, and I think it was Howland May, was it? can't remember, but there was some fabulous ornithological writing, and there was a great big tome, and it was illustrated in large part with Fuerte's plates. And my little brain just lit up when I saw Fuerte's paintings. So that was what
Okay.
started me on the path, was that tooth surgery and then the book.
And as a young girl, you were a bit of a naturalist before you saw the warbler, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I
You
mean,
were
I was always,
already fascinated with nature.
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely fascinated. Like, I remember taking a Frisbee, and I would go into the woods with this Frisbee and fill it up with mushrooms that I could try to identify, and of course, I had the only reference I had was the World Book Encyclopedia. That was it. So, I would try to look them up in the World Book Encyclopedia, which usually didn't have them. So, my mom started taking me to the library, and I would come out with a stack of books I just could hardly carry, because that was how you found things out. If I had had Google as an 8 or 9-year-old, I would have been unstoppable.
Well, you're pretty close to that anyway, so I think
Had to know.
you over now, were you a herp gal or mammals or
Uh,
everything or specifically
no,
birds?
I loved it all. I loved it all. I loved bugs. I loved horses. I loved cats. I loved dogs. I loved birds and animals. But then when I saw that blue-winged warbler, something snapped, and I just focused in on birds.
And that has stayed with you ever since.
Yeah, yeah. My kids tell me there's probably something going on in my brain that doesn't go on in the brains of a lot of people, and so they very gently sort of make fun of me
I don't
because
know you nearly as well as your kids, but I would tend to agree with them in the couple conversations that we've had. So if you're looking for any kind of outside validation or
no, I mean, they think there's something like my daughter, when I will post a picture of some incredible bug I've found, my daughter will comment something like, "She's got a new bug in her life."
see, I don't think a lot of daughters have said that. I don't think that's a common statement or a common sentence that young women
No,
make.
she understands, like, I got obsessed with gnat ogres a couple summers ago. My kids still call me gnat ogre. It's a little robber fly that eats gnats.
Okay. I did not know that. Thank you very much.
Gnat ogre is a great bug.
And if you would give my daughter my condolences. So we're going to jump ahead to college when you went to Harvard, but anything in between 8-year-old army crawling and Harvard that you'd like to share? When did
Uh,
you discover art? When did you become, would you call yourself a painter or an illustrator?
well, I mean, I'm both. I paint and I illustrate and paint, but there was a pivotal event when I was 14. Somebody in the Department of Education in Virginia came up with the great idea to create a school called the Governor's School for the Gifted. And teachers and counselors were able to nominate kids who seemed to need something more than what the traditional school system was giving them. And so I was enrolled in a summer watercolor class at the age of 14. And it was so incredible because the instructors told me what to buy, what kind of paper and what kind of brushes and what kind of paints, and showed me how to use them. And so that was very life changing. And then I got to go to a summer session with all the other kids from all the other counties around Virginia. And we all got together and they put us together in this fishbowl at Mary Baldwin College in Stanton, Virginia. And that was the most fun I've ever had in my life still, because suddenly I was with kids who were not afraid to be nerds, who were not afraid to be passionate about bugs or birds or botany or whatever. And we were taking college level courses, and it was just transformative. It was
Oh,
incredible.
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Around age 14, I was identified as special as well,
Uh-huh.
but I took a different path. I was encouraged to stay home for a week at a time by the school, and then when I was in school, I was encouraged to spend my time in the principal's office
Oh,
and not in the classrooms. We took similar paths in being identified as special. They just had different outcomes, I guess. So now when you went to Harvard, you discovered the Harvard Ornithological Society. Are you looking at blue jays?
now I am looking at a female American redstart, actually a young male. Gotcha. Yeah, and I was going to apologize to you before because my window looks out on gray birches, chamacyperous trees, and then my warbler fall fountain. So it's hopping today because we've had no rain, and so this I have the burble set up real loud, so the birds are just dropping in. So I'm going to be birding. I'm sorry.
I don't apologize. I think it's magical. Now, Harvard Ornithological Society, you
Yeah.
got to Harvard and you told me before you didn't really know that there was such a thing as birding
Right.
until you got to Harvard. Now, I want to share this with you and with the audience. Chris Cooper, who you know,
Hmm.
Chris has been a guest on the podcast, and Chris was a birder in high school and was also a nerd, self-identified nerd, and he was gay, which was not out. Nobody in school knew. And he says that Harvard changed his life when he got there. He joined the Ornithological Society and
Hmm.
discovered there were other birders, and then joined, I don't know what it was, the Gay Men's Club, whatever
Hmm.
that was. And he said, I could begin to date and openly look for birds, and it was life changing.
Yeah, coming out as a birder is harder for men than women.
Yeah, I have discovered that and I only became a birder recently. So I was already past the I don't give a damn what you think stage,
Sure, sure, sure. Yeah, yeah.
but I have discovered in my interviews that it has been more challenging for men between 12 and 18 than it was for young women. And I'm not saying it hasn't been challenging for some young women,
Hmm.
but it certainly appears to me in the people I've interviewed, either for the book or the podcast, that men have struggled with it more. So hopefully that's one of the things we can change going forward, is making that easier for young women, young men, gay, black, whatever it is, and open
Yeah.
that umbrella. But you did go to Harvard and you did join the Ornithological Society. So tell us what that was like to discover that there were other birds or other birders.
It was incredible. I had no clue that birding was a thing. And so I didn't realize that there were other people, A, that were interested in birds and looked at them, B, that actually got together and birded together, C, that there were clubs. And so it wasn't actually the club that got me into birding. It was my friend Alex Hyam, who was a classmate of mine, who was an avid birder and a great ear birder. And he took me to Mount Auburn Cemetery, where we met up with his dad, who was a terrific earbirder. And I remember so clearly being taught the song of the White-Eyed Vireo. And, just kind of like everything just lit up in my switchboard, because I thought, well, if I can identify the calls, I'm golden, because you never get to see a lot of these things. But if you can learn all the calls, and being a musician, I had a good ear for pitch and tone. And so it wasn't very hard for me to memorize bird calls and
So
songs.
what was it about the Vireo that flipped the switch? What was it about the Vireo call?
Well, it's a very distinctive call, the chick career. And so that, the syncopation kind of hit me, but it was also a bird that I had no clue existed. So had it not been singing, we wouldn't have known it was in that willow tree. And so that was the circuit that lit up for me, was that I could
Okay.
find birds on my own as long as I learned the calls. So as a kid, I had chased down birds that were singing. And so I knew an array of common birds, but to go out with an experienced birder and have them say, what's a blah, 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 to have ratting off what was singing, is mind blowing to me, because it had been such a slow and tortoise on my own. But the eye opener.
Having mentors in not just in birding, in anything in life is
Yeah,
such a gift.
it is.
To be there with men and women who have walked that path before,
Hmm.
literally or figuratively,
Right.
and can lead you through it. And it's I think we underestimate the value of that. I think there's an awful lot of wisdom living alone in houses that doesn't get tapped into by people that might benefit from it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
And I don't it's not just birding calls, it's life advice. It's
Sure.
how to sell a car. It's all
Yeah.
kinds of things that are important. Now,
Yep.
you took a job with the strong encouragement of your father, I remember, and went to work for an insurance company, and you
That's back in
quickly
high school. Yeah.
okay, and you quickly swore that off as your last day ever working in an office?
Well, I didn't quite get there, but yeah, the summer of my senior year, my dad had made me take a typing course with a nice keyboard. I can fly, man.
My
Like
mom
some,
was my mom was 121.
it would be really interesting to time myself, because I haven't done that, of course, since high school. But I think generally if I'm interviewing somebody for an article, I just let them talk and I type as they go. So I get their entire conversation, as long as they're not super fast talker. I can get their entire whatever they say as they say it.
Yeah, my
So
son has that skill set. I do not.
it's really hand
It
yeah.
really is. It really is.
Yeah, because it's not as intimidating as being recorded, you know?
Yeah, you're right. Although now if I'm having a business call or it's an important call, I pretty much insist on a Zoom call. And I
Oh,
say,
is that
look,
right?
I want to focus on you and the call and the conversation, and then I'll go back later
Mhm.
and transcribe. And now all these programs, they come with transcriptions, like the one that we're having.
Yeah.
It comes with a transcription as I'm going through and we're doing the production. So, but it's a heck of a skill set. You spent some time with, excuse me, the Nature Conservancy in Connecticut.
Um, yes. In right out of college, in 1981, I took a job with the Nature Conservancy, Connecticut chapter, and I was a preserve design intern, which meant that I was sort of charged with finding the best of the last in the state. So, like, if there was a population of spadefoot toads behind a hospital in a little pool, go and ground truth that, figure out how much land they need to survive. I was constantly being asked questions that I could not answer and that it would have taken a graduate level study to answer, but I had to give my best answers. And that was an incredible proving ground because I was asked to, describe the forest composition of this site. So it's like, okay, there's an overstory of red maple and pignut hickory, and it was just like I had to try to do everything to the best of my ability. And I was thrown into the deep end, and I drove my little car, had no benefits. I was paid $1,200 for each summer that I worked. And I was to live on that until the next summer when they hired me again for another princely sum. And so I learned how to live rent free. I learned how to take care of people's gardens. I already knew that, but I mean, like, I'll watch your dog. I'll take care of your gardens. I'll house sit for you while you're at Squam Lake or whatever. And so that's how I lived for a number of years. And when you don't really have many possessions and when you are very tied to the place where you're living, you just explore. And it was it was an incredible time really because I had no responsibilities other than to keep myself fed and housed and to do this sort of ridiculous job.
Now you said that you were able to do that till you were about 35, and you had mentioned to me once that nonprofits will burn people up and then bring in the new crop.
Yeah, I mean, it was clear to me that I was just gonna I was actually offered a promotion into the stewardship department, but I didn't wanna do anything that took me out of the field. I didn't wanna fly a desk, and so I said, "No, thanks, I'll just keep doing this." But then what happened was it's not actually true that I did that until I was 35. I did that until I did it for about 10 years.
Okay.
A long time, but on the side, I was illustrating, and so I was taking commissions for paintings, and I was illustrating magazine articles, so winter was my time to paint and draw, and it became clear to me that I could support myself on that,
Okay.
and so that's when I decided to break free of the Nature Conservancy job and just be a freelance artist and
Well,
illustrator.
okay, and that leads into a conversation. You are a writer and an artist. You
Right.
have described it to me that you are, as you create your books, an all-in-one package. As a scientist, a writer, an artist, a researcher, unless you run the printing presses, there's really not much more you can do on your books. Is that fair to say?
Well, I like to get a little bit into the whole design side because I have these ideas about how the things ought to look. I don't really have the tools. I don't have the computer skills to do design the way it's done today, but I love to be able to work with the designer. And that's actually quite rare that you're allowed to have any input into that. But Houghton Mifflin understood that about me, and they allowed me, especially in the production of my book, Baby Birds, to really be very hands-on with the design, and all I wanted to make sure was that no errors crept through.
And were you happy with the ultimate design of the book?
My gosh, Houghton Mifflin was so good to me. I loved all the books that they did for me. I loved the designs, I loved the covers, I loved everything. Yeah.
You're speaking in the past tense.
They were sold in 2020 to HarperCollins, and with that, the greatest natural history publisher in the world died
And has not been replaced?
and has not been replaced. Although Princeton University Press has taken over the Field Guide series, the Roger Tory Peterson Field Guide series, and is doing some fabulous work. But I have not published a book since Houghton Mifflin went under. I've been in a state of doing other things. And to be honest, I've been in mourning because when you have had your own work published as a hardcover art book, it's really, really hard to contemplate going to softcover, Amazon publishing, or whatever it is you're going to have to do. So I haven't been sulking, I've been busy, but I haven't gotten a manuscript together to submit.
Okay. Do you have one in the back of your mind that you might do?
I have 3 books underway, manuscripts in various stages of completion, but I just haven't gotten it together to say, okay, we're going to finish this one. Although I did just wrap production with my co-authors, Dawn Hewitt and Jessica Vaughn, on Birdwatching for Dummies.
So tell us about that. That was because that leads to a discussion of your husband, right? That was initially his book in 1997.
Yes, I'm looking around.
Tell us about that and a bit about your husband, and obviously
Okay,
an
hang on.
incredible relationship.
So this is the new book.
Very, very nice. And I must say, I will point this out to the audience. This will be the first time we've done this, so we'll have to figure it out. We'll do a little addendum at the end of this.
Right.
But Julie has generously offered us a copy of this to give away for a bit of a raffle to people who subscribe to the newsletter, along with a subscription to BWD, which we haven't even got to talk about yet, and we will. But I want to say thank you right now before I forget for those 2 things, because it's extremely generous. But
Sure.
tell us about Bill. Tell us about the book. Tell us about the new one coming out. Then we're going to go back and talk about some of your other books that you've done because they're great. And then we're going to move forward again. So,
Like a scratchy record. Okay,
there you go.
Birdwatching for Dummies was originally written in 1996 and 7 by Bill Thompson III, my husband of 23 years, and who passed away in March of 2019. So this book, despite the fact that it was written in 1997 before eBird, before Merlin, before any online listservs, before anything, before Facebook, this book was still in their top 10 bestsellers of the Dummies guides, as out of date as it was. And so they approached a BWD magazine asking if we were interested in updating it. And I said no, because I knew how much work it would be. And I didn't want to put that kind of work into a book that wasn't entirely mine. And the editor, Jessica Vaughn, is very persuasive, and she really, really, really wanted to do it, and she talked me into it. And so Dawn Hewitt came on. She is our managing editor, and she's fantastic. And so the 3 of us just pulled it through the transom and got it done. I told Wiley it would take us 2 years. Wiley gave us 8 months, and it was grueling. But it's a very nice thing to have done.
I would imagine that it is.
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to, because I'll go through that copy before I send it back out to whoever wins. But
Right.
I was just thinking that 19 and 20, those years, with the loss of Bill and COVID and Houghton Mifflin being sold,
Yeah.
that had to be a rough 18 months for you.
Yeah, it was terrible. Lost Bill. 2 months later, his mom died in a house fire. Elsa Thompson, publisher of BWD, and actually the person whose idea the whole magazine was. And then within the span of 14 months, his brother Andy died at age 56 of a heart attack. And so it was the Thompson family apocalypse. And it was terrible for all of us. So there was a tremendous amount of loss. And then in 2020, Houghton Mifflin was sold. And so I no longer had a publisher. And then a really interesting thing happened. And that was that Birdwatchers Digest, without Bill's leadership, was spiraling, circling the drain. And a couple of angel publishers swooped in and said, this magazine is too good to let it die. And Jessica Vaughn, our editor, once again said, I'm not going to let this die. Julie, are you on? And I said, wow, I was kind of thinking I might like to be out from under the magazine, but sure, I'll give it a whirl. So long story short, it's back and better than ever. And we've been at it for 3 years now.
And you are the advising editor, but you're a lot more than that.
Well, I guess I have my hand in a lot of things. I stay out of the whole ad sales and scene, but I'm the art procurer and the iron fist that decides what goes on the cover and what doesn't. And I really enjoy that. I enjoy getting my artist contacts that I've built up over the years and talking them into doing covers for us.
And you write.
Yep. I write a column for every issue, and I write features and edit everything. I'm kind of the science person on the editorial staff, so I'm the person who says, "Nope, nope, nope, that's wrong." That ID is not right. So I have a real high investment in making sure that the magazine is as accurate as possible. And
Well,
if I don't know, I'll find somebody who does.
you're so closely associated with the magazine that it is your reputation that is out there. Whether it should be or not, it absolutely is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, so I think that's important. Before we get to your property, which I do want to get to, because I think this could turn into the longest podcast we've ever done once I get you talking about your property. But you've published a number of books. Share with us some of your favorites, some of the ones that you're particularly proud of. I don't know if that's like picking your favorite child or not, or if you really have favorites you can come out with. But
Oh,
frankly,
yeah.
just talk to us about it. Well, you didn't have to walk away. We could
Well,
talk
no, no,
about
no, 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 but
we could
I'm
I was
visual.
gonna say, we could talk about something else.
Is this backwards in your screen?
Actually, it usually is, but it is not right now.
Because it's backwards for me, so I'm really glad. Yeah.
No, it's frontwards. It's frontwards.
So this is a 3.5 pound baby that I gave birth to, and this is, I guess, one of my proudest accomplishments because this book, Baby Birds, is about the development of 17 different species of baby birds that I have painted mostly from life. It's something that no one else has done. And so I'm insanely proud of it, and I wish it were still in print. But yeah, it's like bluebirds were the birds I started with because I've been working with them since 1981 in their boxes. And so it's a very intimate look at how they develop and what happens mentally to them as they get older, and it's all direct observation. And so because I have raised bluebirds, I got to follow them through about day 65 and paint their plumage changes. So the whole book is like that. It's in-depth studies of birds as they develop. So being a wildlife rehabilitator has served me very well in writing that book because the skill set is being able to feed and nurture the birds I'm painting because I take them out of the nest, feed them for long enough to draw them, put them back in the nest, and then come back the next day and get them and paint their development as it progresses day by day. So not only do you need to be able to sketch and draw from and paint from life, but you need to be able to feed them age appropriate foods and take them out of the nest without endangering them, which is very, very tricky. So I never lost a bird to a predator.
Do not try this at home,
No,
audience.
exactly, exactly.
This
Yeah,
is this
yeah,
is if you were watching one of those car commercials where they're going 90 miles an hour around a corner and it
right,
says, closed road, do not try this on your own. That's
right.
what Julie's getting across, is that she
Yeah,
has the education and the experience and the knowledge to do this
and the
without putting
licenses. Yeah.
and the licenses, without putting the animals and the birds at risk.
Exactly, and a lot of people are horrified that I touch a baby bird because they've been told from a very early age that the mother will smell your scent on it and never take care of it again and all that stuff. And I also wanna point out a very interesting phenomenon that's going on. I do not have a ring light, but what I have is the sun coming in from the west and uplighting my face, which I think is so interesting.
That is pretty cool.
Isn't it cool? Except for this one shadow that makes me look kind of evil.
Evil is not the word I was gonna use. I would say it
I'm
gives you per
enjoying it. I'm really enjoying the ring lighting.
it gives you personality. Now, you said it's out of print. Where can we find it? eBay?
Good luck. It's very expensive now if you can find it. I have 20 copies to my name, and those are the last ones.
Really?
So, yeah, I mean, you may be able to find it with a used bookseller, but that's what happens when your publisher goes under, all your books go out of print at once. So, it's painful. Even though I mean, they may have been destined to be classics, but no one will ever know.
Did the rights fall to you? Can you sell those to someone else and start
I
it?
have the rights, but the trick is finding a publisher who wants to do a 3.5 pound full color art book with fold out pages and life size birds. Find me a publisher like that, we're on.
I don't have one off the top of my head.
Nah, neither do I.
This is the book that you're gonna be in, the one that I'm the next one that I'm going to publish called Why We Love Birds. Timber Press is publishing that, and, I'm pretty excited, and while the book
Yeah,
hasn't been published and we're still getting to know each other, the initial steps have been great.
good for you.
So, we're going to have art, which I need to talk to you about, by the way, because I want to include something of yours in your chapter,
Oh,
and,
okay.
but they've been very open to that. and I'm pretty excited about. So they're making a commitment to the book,
Great.
and which I think is important because of the people that I have in the book. I think I owed it to them to do
Yeah.
that. So I was very excited when Timber Press agreed to take us on, and I'm really looking forward to them publishing it. And we'll see how it goes. We'll see if I meet their expectations and their needs, and if they meet mine. And
Yeah.
if so, we have a couple other books lined up behind it, so we can have some more fun. All right, we have got to move on to the 80 acres of heaven that you own in Ohio. You and Bill owned that together for a long time, and you have had it since. And you're going to tell me some stories about Bill and the property and some of the things you've seen and your yard birds. You're not a huge lister, but you are very detailed about your yard birds. By the way, I don't know if it counts if you have an 80-acre yard, but nonetheless, there you go.
You
But
mean?
before
Of course it counts.
I've got an acre and a half. I have one habitat. You own
Okay.
an estate.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, I would say that 99% of the birds that I've got on my property list have been from the yard, because this is where I am all the time.
Yeah.
And if a short-eared owl flies over, and you see it from the birding tower, well, that's your yard.
See, that's an interesting statement that most people don't get to make. If you see it from the birding tower,
Right, right.
I would suggest that most people who self-identify as a birder do not necessarily have a birding tower.
No,
They
you
might
would
have a
have
pair of binoculars. They might have a
right,
lawn chair. They might
right,
have a porch.
right.
But my wife has never said, I'll meet you up at the tower. We've not had that conversation. So before we get on to everything else, tell me about Blue Jays
Blue jays.
and your
Oh,
book
yeah.
and your love of Blue Jays.
Yeah, yeah, hang on. I gotta get into the visual.
She keeps leaving. By the way, look at the beautiful orchid. She put it there for this. So while she's not there, we can at least identify the orchid. And Julie would like you to know she does not chew tobacco. She has that, but she doesn't chew tobacco.
So here's Saving Jemima, which is my Blue Jay tome. And I'm very proud of baby birds, but as I'm also extremely proud of this one because this is homemade. These are the end papers are a watercolor designed to look like a blue jay's egg, spatters. And then the whole thing I've illustrated with these little paintings, which I wanted to have a sort of a charming Beatrix Potter feel to them. These are all the
And it
things.
does.
Yeah, I fed the baby blue jay. She loves sugar snap peas. So basically this is it's sort of like a novel with a bird as the protagonist, but in the end it's also a memoir. So this is a sort of a journal of the life of one blue jay and how I followed her for 8 months and how she got me through the worst part of my life. She saved me. I mean, it sounds trite and people are always saying that about their rescue dogs, but it's really true. This bird got me through.
I
She
don't
was very
think anybody who's ever come out on the other side of a tough time would call it trite.
yeah, right.
Whatever it takes to get through a tough time,
Yeah.
whether it's a book or a blue jay or a dog or a neighbor or
Mhm.
a favorite band or whatever it
Right,
is that
right.
helped get you through that. The idea that someone would think it trite is remarkably small, at
Well,
least in my view.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, because you have to walk a mile in somebody's shoes, but, having for me, I need an object of obsession and study in front of me at all times, whether it's a new book project or whether it's studying the heck out of some bird that I'm raising. Like, I had the most incredible summer this summer because I, with my daughter, raised a mockingbird, which was a dream bird for me. I've always wanted to raise a mockingbird. I've raised brown thrashers, but I'd never raised a mocker. And the bird blew past all my expectations of how cool it would be and how fun to raise and release. And I then immediately after, well, I still had the mockingbird. I took in 2 Acadian flycatchers and raised them, which I'm not sure anybody's ever done. So I had the most insanely cool summer, but I couldn't really completely absorb myself into all that because I was also throwing a wedding for my daughter on my place at the end of July. So
And so in a Subaru.
oh, no, that was the year before. But so what I'm saying is, but I took all the notes and I took all the photographs and I kept all the journals. So I have these kernels of amazing things that are just waiting for me to get to them.
It's a long list of things you have waiting for you to get to.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
tell me about Skeetles.
Well, Skeetles was a Jay who was here for about a year and a half, off and on, and he was one that I could identify. He was a very funny Jay who bobbed and said Skeetle Skeetle a lot, but he was not a major player in my Jay studies.
Okay.
He came after the whole Jemima experience.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Now you've got 80 acres there. You shared that for a quarter century with Bill. You have, at last count, or the last time you and I spoke, 198 yardbirds.
I made it to 199, Scott, with
What got you there?
a fish crow this spring.
Oh, you're kidding.
I was in the tower and I was like, oh my God, I was just transported to the Carolina coast. I was right there. And the thing called 8 times. And each time I heard it, I said, yep, that's a fish crow. And it was going by. But apparently they're in Akron. So
Wow.
to be expected. But it was not a bird that was on my bingo card. I was not thinking, yep, the next one's going to be a fish crow. So that was
So does
199. I am stuck at 199. It's a beautiful
does
place.
everybody get invited up for the 200 party?
I've been talking about, like, what will it be and what will I do to celebrate?
Well, you know what you could do? You could do a fundraiser for your favorite charity by having everybody throw $10 in and pick what they think number 200 will be.
That's actually a very, very cool idea.
Have a
So
few people.
I would have to publish the list that I have so
I
that
got to tell you, I
yeah.
think that if you publish that list in BWD and you said, these are the 199 that we've seen, here's the general location of where our 80 acres are.
Mhm.
Everybody who wants to send in $10, all the money's going to whatever it is.
Right.
And whoever guesses the 200th bird, it's in their name that the money goes to the charity. Or here's 5 nature-related charities, and the winner gets to pick the charity and have it go in their name. I
Yeah.
bet you'd collect a ton of money.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
bet
probably would. I mean, it'd be an administrative nightmare.
it would be.
Do
It
I
would
want
be
to do that? But
oh, you would be amazed at how good I am at developing things for other people to do. I have the
Julie, here's
most
a great idea for you.
I have an amazing skill set of passing work up. But in all candor, I believe that would be a tremendously popular article in BWD.
Yeah.
I think that would
Yeah.
be really neat. And
I love that.
I made a couple of notes. In 2000, you got a Eurasian collared dove and a golden eagle.
The Eurasian collared dove would have been a first of state had the Rare Records Committee accepted my field painting of the bird done from life. But no, because it wasn't a photograph, they didn't accept it. But that fall, a mourning dove hunter shot one, and then they had their record. But I got the first of state.
You know what you could have done? You could have taken a photo of your illustration, because then it would have been a photo.
I did. And it was a photo, and they didn't accept it. This has happened to me over and over in my life. I've submitted field studies of a little gull, which would have been a first of state for West Virginia, drawings of it next to a ring-billed gull, everything painted. None of us had a telephoto lens, so I had my sketch pad, and I did it. Not accepted.
That's amazing.
Like I could make up a little gull.
Or like you would.
Or like I would.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, well.
2002, white-winged crossbill.
In my bird bath.
Right outside the window.
I said, what is that butt ugly bird in my bird bath? That is the ugliest bird I have ever seen. It was a white-winged crossbill.
Okay. Now I have described you as being a woman who focuses on the micro over the macro. And you've traveled the world, you've been to Africa a number of times, you've seen a lot that there is to see, but you really are fascinated with everything that happens on your property.
Yeah.
Your morning walks and the flowers and the insects and everything. I mean, if somebody said to you could never leave these 80 acres again, it would be restrictive, but I don't think it would be cruel.
Yeah, just bring me food. I was pre-adapted for the COVID lockdown. I was fine. I would go 14 days without going to the grocery store. And that's because I've been planning meals all my life, and I have 2 refrigerators and a freezer. Who needs to go to the store?
I think that works.
It works.
I have 3 final stories I want to ask you about, or I'd like you to share.
Yep.
You can do them in the order you want. There's a Kirtland's warbler story. there's a solitary sandpiper story,
Oh, yeah.
and there's a Henslow sparrow story.
Oh, my goodness.
See, you're going to be crying before we get to the end of the three, but
Nah, I'll be all right. Which one do you want?
start with Henslow's.
Well, that's the last one, actually. I'm a linear person. We have to start with the first one.
With the first one would be the Kirtlands?
Yeah.
Okay, let's start Kirtlands. August 11th, 2012.
Yeah, Bill and I are enjoying a bottle of Chardonnay out in the meadow. This is a very rare thing that we just decide we're just going to take chairs out, and I think we brought a camera. I think he had his big camera with him. And we hear, and it's like, give me the date again.
August 11th, 2012.
Yeah. So it was crazy because, the late summer bug music is going and everything. And then we hear chirp, 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 chirp. We hear the song of a Kirtland's warbler, which I knew because I had been to Mayo to see them. And it was throaty, it was strong, it was right there. And it was in the young pines along the edge of the meadow, which were a little above head height. I said, Bill, that was a Kirtland's warbler. We got to see it. And he raised his binoculars. He says, Zick, I got it. And he had it in his binocs because he was lightning fast. He was so good. And he got it in his binocs. I whipped around, tried to get it in my binocs, kicked over the bottle of wine. It was a very sad moment. And I never got it in the binocs, but I saw a large, long, yellow warbler, fly. And that was the end of it. But he got a good look at it. And that was not a bird that we were expecting. But it was so cool, A, that it sang, and B, that it was in the pines. It was just the coolest thing.
Yeah, singing in August is not a given.
No, not at all.
I mean,
No.
if it had been May or April, that's one
Right.
thing, but
Right.
August, maybe it was calling out to you and Bill.
Well, it was almost as if it was preordained because we had never before taken our chairs out into the middle of the meadow. It was like Bill was a little spooky. He was a little fey. He was like, he would say, there ought to be a loon on that pond. And then the next thing we know, there's a loon. It was that kind of thing. He was a little spooky. So that was cool. So yeah, that's the first one. So that made it onto the list.
I would think so. All right, talk to me about the solitary sandpiper story.
Oh my gosh. Bill was forever prognosticating about what would be next on the bird list. We got to get this. This spring, we're going to get the blah, blah, blah. Sometimes he was right. He would say, we need a snipe. It's ridiculous we don't have a snipe. And then I'd walk out to the mailbox maybe a month later and scare a snipe would fly. So he was spooky that way. So he always said that our next bird had to be solitary sandpiper because they go over, they're around. Problem is we don't have any water on this dry ridge. So the chances of getting one on our place were pretty low. So after he died, he had a green burial and he's buried out in the meadow by the pine. And in fact, not far from where we saw the Kirtland's warbler. And I was walking out to get the mail and I looked out and I saw something kind of dark, kind of bobbing around out there in the middle of the path near his grave. And I said, well, that looks like a shorebird because I always wear binoculars. He lifted my binoculars and it was a solitary sandpiper, which proceeded to walk right toward his grave. Had his back to me. It was just kind of poking around, and it had been raining a lot, so there's a little bit of water in the depression near his grave. So that's where the solitary sandpiper was.
That's pretty cool.
It was very cool.
That is really nice. All right, last one, Henslow sparrows.
Oh my God, that was another one that he said we got to get it. We got to get it. It ought to be here. We ought to get it. And in 2019, he died March 25th, 2019. And on July 6th, I believe, 2019, I was out getting the mail when I heard slick. And I was like, what's a Henslow sparrow doing here? And I heard it again. And I ran back. No, I had my little bitty binoculars on me. And I went out and ground truthed it. And there it was. And it was singing as if it were on territory. And I was like, holy cow, this is so cool. So over the next couple of days, not one, not two, but 6 males came into this hayfield and sang and set out their territories, and they reproduced and they raised young in this hayfield right across from my mailbox. And the reason they did this was we had had a very, very rainy year. It rained all through the spring hay cutting. They couldn't take the hay. And then it rained all through June. And then here it was in early July, and it finally quit raining. And so the entire southeast of Ohio was suddenly cut. Everybody could cut the hay all at the same time. But this meadow didn't get cut. And somehow the bat signal went out to the Henslow sparrows who were cut in mid brood, and they all came there and they all settled. And I still don't know how those birds found that little postage stamp sized hayfield. But it was the greatest gift I could have been given that spring, that summer that Bill died, because I just spent every morning out there. I learned to wear as little clothing as possible because I was soaked because the hay was past my head. And so I would just wear all nylon and I would just go drawing out there with my scope and my iPhone, and I made little videos of them singing, and I witnessed copulation, and I just buried myself in Henslow sparrows for that summer. When we rescued BWD, my flagship article and cover were that Henslow sparrow and the story of my summer with them. And they've never come back because the guy cut the hay in September, and despite my begging him not to, he cut it when the babies were learning to fly. And that was a crazy story. I was having dinner at a friend's house, another parabiologist that I love, the Hugheses, who live not far from here. And I was sitting there enjoying dinner with them, and I said, guys, I gotta go. Something's wrong back home. I gotta go. And I got in the car. I didn't know what was wrong back home, but as I came up, I saw the tractor, and he was baling the Henslow sparrow field. And my connection to those birds was so deep that I felt their distress. And I ran across the hayfield and I said to him, did you see any birds as you were cutting? He goes, all kinds of little gray birds flying up, fluttering around. Yeah, that would be the Henslow sparrows and their babies. So sometimes it's hard to live in this world, It's just when you care and you get so deep into it and you realize that the rest of the world really doesn't give a flying about the things that move you so much.
Well, I would agree with you that a lot of people don't, but I think a lot of people do.
Yeah.
And, it's unfortunate that he wasn't able or willing to hold off before he did that. But
I'm a crazy bird lady. What do I know,
well, you are a crazy bird lady, but you do know a lot. So you make for an interesting conversation. And I want to thank you for that. I have thoroughly enjoyed this, and I know our audience would. The last thing before we go, well, not the last thing. I'm going to throw my email up now, and anybody who wants a shot at a gift subscription to BWD or a copy of the newly reworked Bird Watching for Dummies, and I need all the dummy books. I qualify for every single one of them. Send me your email. We'll have a little drawing, and we will award the winner. So if you stayed with us through the whole podcast and you take 10 seconds and send us an email, let's see. Let's find out who wins this thing. But I did ask Julie to pick a book, not one of hers. We're going to throw the covers of her books up, and you guys can sleuth them out and find them. But she's going to make a recommendation for a book that she thinks the audience would enjoy. So what do you got for us, Julie?
Well, I've been doing book reviews for the Wall Street Journal for probably 10 or 12 years, and I really enjoy it because they send me these fabulous new books, and I get to read them and write about them. And my book of the year, I believe it was last year, was Ed Yong's An Immense World. Ed Yong is a California scientific journalist who is an incredible person, and he has written this book about the sensory capabilities of non-human life forms, whales, foxes, elephants, squid. It goes across the taxa, and he actually makes you think about what it would be like to be a centipede, and what kind of stimuli you might take in and how you react to it. It's an incredible book. And I was very honored when the Wall Street Journal decided to make it their top pick for the year, because I had just loved it so much. And the cool thing about Ed Yong, as if there isn't enough cool about him, is he's just taken up birding. And that excites me because I'm hoping that we'll get some more books with bird-centric, themes, although I love all life forms. But having Ed Yong become a birder is a very, very good thing.
Well, that'll be exciting, I think, for all of us, and I look forward to that. The cover should be up on the screen now, so you can take a look at it and hopefully order it. And you're talking to a woman who has written and read quite a few books, so I think we should give some credence to her recommendation and suggestions. If you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe to the channel, please do. Drop us a comment or click like. Those things help. Our podcast then gets seen by other people. You've seen it's commercial free. This is not a money-making operation. This is done out of love. It's just my way of getting to talk to some really brilliant, interesting people and then get to share it with all of you. So, the more people that like it, what is that old line? Nothing draws a crowd like a large group of people. So the more people that like it, the more YouTube says, hey, you should watch this. And the more people find out about these kind of things. And I think the world becomes a better place. Maybe the next guy won't plow into the field with the hens, little sparrows on it if he's had a chance to hear some stories like this. As regular listeners, regular audience knows, when I follow this up, when I'm done, I do a field notes, which is a 6, 7, 8 minute thing. I pick a single bird or animal or park, and I just look up some information and then talk about it for a few minutes. I've got to figure it out. I thought I was going to do blue jays. It was an easy pick, knowing I was going to talk to Julie, but maybe it's hens, little sparrows that I want to talk about. Do you have a choice, Julie? Do you prefer which one I do field notes on?
I think hens, little sparrows would be great because that's a bird who's losing grassland habitat everywhere it looks.
Henslows it is. So the next field notes is going to be henslow sparrows. So stay tuned, and it will be a part of this, and we'll be excited about that happening. And I'm going to beg Julie to send me some copies of some of her art and her photos so I can throw them up during this podcast. Anything you want to send me, Julie, we'll be producing it in the next couple of days. I would love to have it. And as I wrap up every show, I ask all of you, whatever it is you're doing in the great outdoors, or even if you're indoors watching a podcast or reading about the great outdoors, stay safe and stay curious. Have a great day. Julie, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for shining your light on me.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Field Notes. Field Notes is a little thing that we do at the end of every podcast where I get a chance for a couple of minutes to talk about a bird, an animal, a park, or maybe something different. Today's going to be a bird, and I'm looking forward to that. It's a fun little bird. And if you just finished the podcast with Julie Zickefoose, you'll know we talk about henslow sparrows, and I committed to doing the field notes on henslow sparrows. I thought it was going to be blue jays, but Julie convinced me that henslows it is. So I'll do blue jays another time. But today we're going to talk about henslow sparrows. Now, around the country, around the lower 48 states, there are almost 50 species of sparrows that call the United States home. But this little henslow sparrow, is a small, chunky little dude, a grassland sparrow, if you will. And we have a couple grassland sparrows in the U.S., the henslows, the grasshopper sparrow, and the bears. I just got to see a grasshoppers recently. Got some really neat photos of it. Matter of fact, we'll throw one up here. And beautiful bird. And the henslows is a beautiful bird as well. It was named after a man named John Stevens Henslow, who was a mentor to Charles Darwin, and Darwin named the sparrow the henslow sparrow, which is kind of cool. It's known as the mouse of the prairie. Now, it likes the grasslands, it likes the prairies, but it's also just as quick to walk along the ground as it is to fly. It doesn't like to show itself unless it has to, except when it's singing. During breeding season, the males will get up there. Now, it is elusive. It can be challenging to see, and it is more easily heard than seen. But if you do see it, you're looking for rusty colored wings, olive green head, a streaked back, and a buffy breast. All of it is muted and designed to marry into the grasslands, into the prairie. And it just allows the camouflage, is extremely well camouflaged in high grass, which gives it a better chance for survival. It has a very short song, one of the shortest, not only in the sparrow family, but in all families. And it's kind of I don't really know how to do it. I'm not great at that, but that's what it is. It's about a half second, and it sounds like maybe a hiccup or a cricket, and they will come to the top of their grasslands, and the males will belt out their half-second song as often as they need to until they get a female, which of course is their ultimate goal. The henslow sparrows breed in the Midwest and the Northeast, and that is why, if you watch the Julie Zickefoose podcast, why she was so excited to have, I believe, 6 nesting pair in a little field across the street from her house. And she studied them every day and drew them. And as you know, she's an illustrator, and she fell in love with these birds. And then they come, that's in the summer, the Midwest and the Northeast when they breed. And then they winter down by me in the Southeast, although mostly along the Gulf Coast. And we're a bit inland from that. But we get the henslow sparrows down here in the winter. Unfortunately, sparrows is estimated to have dropped by 80% in the last 50 years, 80%. And that is almost 100% due to the loss of habitat. They are very habitat sensitive. They don't adjust well to not having the habitat that they're used to. They're now near threatened status, probably going to threatened status fairly soon. And for us to save the Henslow the sparrow into the future, for others to enjoy, and for the role that it plays overall in our natural world, grassland restoration is key. A lot of people are working on that now, trying to get some land converted back, if you will, in order to save not just the Henslow sparrows, but to save a lot of species. But the Henslow sparrows would be one that benefited. So hopefully that will happen. I hope you learned a little bit about Henslow sparrows today. I had fun researching them. I did not know most of the things that I shared with you until I did that research, which is the case for almost all of these field notes. I absolutely love that. I'm going to throw the email up. If you've got any questions, suggestions for future field notes, please send me a note. I'd be thrilled to do that. And if you get an opportunity, if you haven't yet, to subscribe to our channel, I would really appreciate it. Same thing with a comment or a like. All of those things benefit the channel. We're not running ads or anything on the channel, not trying to make money with it, but we are trying to share the story of nature and of our guests with as many people as possible. And so it's the way YouTube works is the more people you get, the more people you get, and they start to share it. And so if you get a chance to do that, thanks so much. And if you don't, and you just had the opportunity to listen in, thank you for doing that. Much appreciated. And as always, stay safe and stay curious. Have a great day.